Hi, and welcome back to Becca Babbles podcast. I'm your host, Becca. I'm a certified personal trainer, holistic health coach, and future chiropractor on my way to figuring out this thing we called life. Now, let's get babbling. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Becca Babbles podcast. I'm your host, Becca, and this week I've got an exciting interview for you guys. It is one of my mentors, Dr. Kyle Thompson. He is such an amazing human being, and he's so funny, kind, and just gives everything his all, and you can tell he pours his heart and soul into everything that he does, and he has a huge interest in leadership and communication and how to help people, specifically students and clinicians, to grow in their leadership and communication so that we can show up even better for our patients every single time they walk into the door. So I'm currently doing his Leadership Academy program, and I have learned so much throughout it. And I wanted to give you guys some information on what that is like and what he has learned and the stuff that he has put into that program. But also, if you are not a clinician, you can apply this to your everyday life. People need to show up more as leaders within their day-to-day life so that they can show up for their families and their friends and have those hard conversations that you may not want to be having, but you need to be having. And so we go into all things: what it's like to be a leader on stage, what it's like to be a leader of a group, communication, the importance of communication, but also what it's like to be a leader within your family, within your friendships, within other relationships that you have, and then also how to have those hard conversations that you may be uncomfortable to have. So make sure you listen to the whole podcast, and I'll make sure to put all of Kyle's Instagram and website, and if you want to book an appointment with him, because Kyle is a sports chiropractor at Kinetic Chain in the Dallas area, but he's also on the Rehab 2 Performance Board, where he is a part of that, or who has created that Leadership Academy. So make sure you go and check him out. With all that being said, I can't wait to babble with you next time. All right, Kyle. So I want you to think about, when you hear the word leader, what comes to mind? What does that mean for you?
Well, that's a hot take right off the bat.
Yeah,
That's
how we do it here.
That's a great question. I think for me, like, a leader is somebody who inspires others, right? Like there's a lot of definitions of leadership or what it is to be a leader. Like, a lot of people confuse being a manager with being a leader. Leadership, at least in my experience, has led to some form of change. Like, if you were providing great leadership for yourself or for somebody you're helping or whatever the case is, like, I find that the end result is often behavior change, or to get an outcome, or something needs to change, right? And so the probably, like, the common person that a lot of people refer to when thinking about a leader is Simon Sinek, right? The tagline of the why guy, right? And he's phenomenal. Like, if you ever spend some time, like, just diving into his work, because his whole work is to create inspiration, because he wants to change the world, right? And if you dive into his work, you're like, yeah, sure, he's maybe a little cliche when it comes to that stuff, but he's super popularized and charismatic. But, like, he talks about it as this form, like leadership. It comes in the form of inspiration, and really you want to do something about something, right? And so for me, that's my answer for that, right?
So would you say leadership is more inspiration, empowering, where managing is just getting people to do something?
Pretty cool. So because management is, you're trying to work towards an outcome, right? Like, and you're just keeping the guardrails on to make sure that you're continuing to move forward. Like, a lot of people will confuse, will think that's leadership by just telling somebody to do something, right? And you're like, cool, yeah, that's direction. You're providing direction for something, or correction, to be able to stay on task. But really, the person who's doing that is just managing behavior to end up at an outcome, right? And leadership is in itself trying to, is more growth oriented than that, right? So like if you are providing correction from a place of like, hey, like here's why, this is, you go deeper into the reasonings of like, this is how we got here, this is what's happening, this is what we're trying to do, right? Oftentimes it comes from a place of education and teaching. And if that's the true intent behind that, to take beyond where it's just like, this is the outcome, you're trying to create more within that sphere, I think that relates more into the realm of leadership than just straight, outcomes.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like making people come along with the story or intent that you have rather than forcing them to do it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Was there ever a moment for you where, whether that be in like sports or early career, where you were like, oh shoot, like communication and leadership actually really matters, and what did that look like for you?
surprisingly, no.
Mm.
Yeah. So like, great question. So like for those that may not know me super well, is that at one point in time I was an All-American athlete. I was a track and field for Texas Tech at one point in a past life, and so I was quite heavily invested in sports and in high level academia and trying to achieve the most I could. And in that, but I was also in an individual sport. I was a pole vaulter, right? And a lot of that is self-driven, right? It's in any individual sport, really. You end up just kind of, yeah, sure, you're part of a team, but like it's self-driven. And so I wasn't thinking that I needed to communicate. In fact, communication was probably the hardest thing for me to do. Like I'm a pretty severe introvert, if you get to know me pretty well, and I like my alone time. But it wasn't until that and I actually, it's really funny. Like my coach told me one time I was annoying. And so like, I don't think I was communicating, and I didn't think I was communicating in a way that actually got my point across. So I actually think I was really bad at it. So, and so like that actually didn't teach me that. That taught me a lot more on self-determination and different qualities and different lessons. But the lesson of communication came later when I decided that teaching was something that was a huge value to me. Because I've always been into education and learning and growth in that regard, and just growth in general. But education to me was beaten into my skull from an early age, because my entire family on my father's side are educators. My grandpa is a superintendent. My uncle was a superintendent. His mother was a teacher. My dad is in business, but most of my father's family was in education, higher level education. Everyone had an MBA or some form of master's or graduate degree. And on my dad's side, including my mom, so everyone on my dad's side, including my mom, I am the 7th person to hold a doctorate degree. And so education from the get-go was a huge emphasis for my family. And so like for me, like learning, studying is just what we do. And so for me, like that was always something that I felt was just, again, part of my blood. So when I went to chiropractic school, it just made sense. And when I graduated, it still made sense to continue to do the same thing. Why? Because for the sake of growth and education and learning and teaching, as the more we learn about education and growth and knowledge, is that it comes from teaching. Your understanding of a topic can be fully represented based on your level of articulation. So if you can teach it, then you know it, right? And I felt that teaching was just the natural next step for me at that point in my life, and which required me to communicate. So the long roundabout answer is that like I didn't learn those lessons until I decided that to continue my educational journey, I needed to learn to communicate. And from that, helped me understand why some people wouldn't respond to what my interjections and communicate in conversation was, or like why like people react the way they do when you're standing on a stage and projecting yourself outwards towards the world. or you post on social media and you get criticism. Like, why do things happen the way they do? The better you get at learning and communicating, the more effective you can be in creating clarity in your message. So it becomes a natural stepping stone. It's a long-winded answer.
No, I love it. Have you always been this introspective, or was it when you like started going to chiropractic school and was like, oh wait, what I'm saying on stage when I'm like teaching students how to like palpate or talk about a certain rehab topic and no one was listening, was that when you were like, oh, that's when I need to do leadership, like dive into this more and be more introspective?
Yeah, so your question is, like, was I always this introspective, or introspective about leadership, or just introspective in general?
Both. So let's start with the introspective.
In general, no, it's just I've been this way since the first thing I can remember. Again, like the whole solo individual sport thing is that I spent a lot of time reflecting on just how do I be better about doing what I'm doing. The interesting thing about pole vaulting, because it's kind of a niche sport, and I don't think that this is totally unique to pole vault, but it's my experience, so I'm just going to say it like it is that pole vaulting is kind of this weird like sport that forces you to confront yourself and who you are as an individual if you pay attention to it, right? Like, to describe the sport, guys, like you pick up a stick and you run full speed at an immovable object and you stick it in the ground, and then you use it to fling yourself in the air. And so there's an element of fear involved in that. And so for me, it's like, like I think I'm just naturally this way, but that sport enhanced that experience because I was quite fearful. I was known to be quite of a head case early on in my career because, I'd chicken out, frankly, in full honesty. Like it would scare the crap out of me. And eventually I learned to confront that fear, but having to confront it created this like introspective process that I went through to help me like, oh, okay. Like it helped me develop courage. And by going through that process, which I started when I was in 7th grade, so I don't know, what age is that? 13, maybe?
Sure.
12, 13. That kind of started me on that path. And then since then, that has just been a lens that I look through everything with. Now, into leadership, right? I'm all that quality of like I'm always analyzing on like the impact that I'm having and that other people have on the immediate world around me. So I'm always watching facial expressions. I'm always watching how people react, body language, how people react to me, what I'm projecting, and just kind of seeing how it all works, or at least it's just watching, people watching, so to speak. That quality helped me start paying attention to kind of how when I started putting myself out in front, what happened. It took a while because public speaking was quite a huge fear of mine for a while because I got nervous because I was worried about being judged. And I eventually got over that again through the same process. But leadership, like if you're wanting to create an impact, leadership is a natural progression for things because you can't really do things alone. And so as I was paying attention to things and I started putting myself out in front because I wanted to teach and learn and grow, I realized that I needed to use this lens to help me understand how to better connect with people because then I could make a bigger impact. Gotcha. That makes sense? Mm-hmm. Right? So like, I don't get asked this a lot, so maybe I'm going to work through this as I'm talking. But yeah, like it's like leadership helps you create lasting impact. It's like a rippling effect. Like there's a second, third, fourth order consequence of just being able to stand in front and share a message with the world. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's your identity if somebody doesn't like that. And like let me see if I'm getting off track for a second. But like it doesn't mean that if like you're a bad leader or a bad communicator if nobody responds to it. It's just you're not communicating in a way that somebody can resonate with. And if the goal is to create an impact or help somebody else, ultimately that's what it comes from, is that, well, how can I be a better leader to help them in the way that they need? So it came from a desire of, I'm recognizing what somebody else is responding to with, and how can I better help them see what I'm trying to do? So it comes from an inquisitive process rather than like, hey, I'm the one in charge. And
How
so,
did you know when people weren't responding to you?
body
Like, what can
language.
people, what specific body language are you looking for?
Before we do that, did what I say make sense? I think I got a little
Yes.
jumbled there. Okay, I just want to make sure. So ask me clarification if it did make sense. So like, actually, we'll talk about this in cohort, right? Actually, I think tonight. But so body language. So if you ever read the book, the body what is it?
The body keeps the score.
The body, not the body
No.
keeps the score. It's hold on, I gotta put my glasses on.
He's
It's by
getting
Joe
old.
Navarro. I know I'm getting so old. My vision's so bad. There's a book by Joe Navarro, who was the FBI lead interrogator for a while. And what everybody is saying. There it is, right there. What everybody is saying by Joe Navarro. And that's where I got most of my information from. And essentially, this guy basically went through and just, figured out what the tells are from body language. And I mean, most of human communication is nonverbal. And so there's universal tells of how people behave, how they stand, how they walk, what facial expressions are they using. Like that will tell you a lot before they even open their mouths. And so what I'm looking for are universal agreement factors or body languages that indicate like, okay, cool, they're at least open to what I'm saying, right? So the first part is like, I'm just trying to convey a message to like I think it is important. But then the second part is like, okay, I'm trying to figure out how open are they? So to answer your question specifically, body languages are like open postures, like, hands kind of like out to their sides or like leaning forward. How they manage space indicates where they're at in terms of how receptive they are, for example. So like, put it together, open versus closed postures. I think I'm putting them together now. So open postures indicate more receptiveness. Closed postures mean they're protecting themselves, less receptiveness. If they're leaning closer, that means they're more engaged. If they lean away, they're trying to create space. Body language it's universal, and you can kind of tell based on how they are in relation to you, whether or how they're open versus closed. So it's kind of this like range of body languages that are kind of confusing, but yeah, it's kind of telling all at the same time. And what you're generally looking for, again, this is to answer your question, what you're generally looking for is more openness. So like, do they seem more open, more vulnerable, and from a posturing standpoint, in a place that like, hey, like I am okay with what you're saying. So like, if somebody's less open to you, they're going to cross their arms, they're going to back away, they're going to turn from you, right? Or they're going to roll their eyes, right? I'm more looking for things like open eyes, nodding, relaxed shoulders, open postures, maybe facing me and being closer. So to answer your question, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is that I'm looking for the body language to be more open, more receptive, less barriers between me and them, and pretty much trying to like and looking for levels of increasing engagement.
When you have someone, let's say they're like crossed arms, turned to the side, they're not really like open to you at all. How do you change your verbiage or approach?
So like when I'm teaching?
Yeah.
Okay. Like so say somebody is acting in that way, right? If you're trying to build a connection, because essentially everything with communication is you're trying to build connection, right? It's the same thing with leadership. Like leadership is trying to inspire change. You can only do that based off of an established connection or some established resonance with somebody. If they're in a closed posture, that means there's less resonance with that person. There's less of a relationship, less of a connection, less of a bond in that particular moment. Doesn't mean that they may not, doesn't mean anything other than that. From your perspective, you can't come into it like, oh, they don't like me because they're not paying attention to me. We can't draw those conclusions. What we can say is this is happening in this moment, and there's no connection between me and them for whatever reason. So at that point, there are several ways you can go about trying to create a connection with them non-verbally, right? You can't come into a situation like that verbally and get them to engage when you're teaching, for example. The best way is to come around and engage in their space, in their periphery, in a way that is neutral. So you come in a way that helps start to get them interested. So maybe just showing up in their peripheral vision can be enough. So essentially, I'm just running a test, right? So maybe I show up. The most common thing that you can do is just mirror their body language. So like if they're facing away from you, you just face the same way, right? If their arms are crossed, your arms are crossed, right? But it's just like any kind of form of conversation, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, you have to lead the conversation a little bit. So you have one person's leading, one person's following, or there's an established dialogue back and forth. It's the same thing nonverbally. So you can do the same thing as them, or you can kind of give it a half neutral, half leading posture to help them kind of re-engage with you. Does that make sense?
So when you say that you need to get into their periphery, are you saying when you're on stage and they're not listening to you, it's more of you have to do this on the offhand when you're talking to them, or like in their day-to-day,
while you're doing it
on stage, or while you're okay.
Well, it's hard, right? Because you're on stage. If you're limited to a specific area, like the ideal scenario is like if you're in a one-on-one conversation, right? Then you can kind of mirror them, and that's a little easier because it's kind of like you versus them. If you're on stage to a lot of different people, then you have to it's like, okay, what I'm saying is not resonating with them for whatever reason. And so if your goal is to get that one person to change, then you can maybe target a little bit in terms of like, what you're saying to kind of project your voice a little bit towards them to get them to engage with you. You can do that way. You can walk into the crowd. You can take up more space. You can become in a center of attention, for example. You can just draw attention to yourself. Sometimes people need to be reminded of that. That's a little tough too, because sometimes like no matter what you do, no matter who you're teaching to, if it's a group of people, a couple people are not going to be paying attention. And a couple people are always going to be distracting or being disrespectful and talking, right? I'm guilty of that myself, right? And so it's you can't take it personally, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if that's happening, and what you can do is usually either change your tone, change your space where you're at in space. You can become a target. You can also change the pace of what you speak to create distraction or get them out of their frame of mind to bring them back in.
So changing it up so it's almost like how people say on social media, if you like everyone wants the fast changing things.
You gotta get a hook, right? You gotta hook them in. Yep, absolutely. You get them with a hook, right? Whoosh, reel them back in.
Yeah.
That's a skill. And it takes effort and testing and practice to get good at it.
What's the hardest skill that you had to learn when it comes to leadership?
Not taking it personally. I would say that. I'm a people pleaser, and developing this skill and the layers of skin to not let it bother you when people aren't interested in what you have to share can be pretty insulting. Because for me, in my case, I'm pouring my heart out to try to share something with the world. And I have to remind myself that not everybody cares. And that's okay. You don't have to. I'm trying to speak to the people in the room that are interested in what I have to share. And so that's kind of the hardest thing, right? Is developing that kind of the skill of not letting it bother you, right? Because it doesn't ever not bother you. but not letting it show, right? And that's kind of where it comes back to like, hey, like people are going to be people. The skills other than that, right? Like orienting skills, right? Your projection of your voice, the tonality, the pace, how you speak and enunciate your words. Those can be learned. Like those can be learned. If you can get past that, the initial fear creating thoughts and narratives that we have in our head, and then insulate yourself from judgment, it becomes rather straightforward. It is a bit of a performance, so the skill of performing is a tough one as well, because you do have to become a little bit of a different kind of person when you step on the stage, because all eyes are on you and you have to perform just like an athlete.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How do you work through that process of not taking it personally? What strategies have you used?
I do two things. First thing is that I tell myself that, look, it still gets me sometimes. So I mean, as you've heard me speak, I grab people because I'm just like, hey, if you're here, pay attention, right?
You did it to me.
I have done it to you.
Yeah.
I do that because if you're going to spend time, and like people get distracted, like 20 minutes max, and then people start wandering, right? So I try to remind myself that it's like, hey, the first thing I do is I remind myself to quit being so selfish that like all eyes need to be on me at all times. Like that's incredibly selfish on my regard, to think that I deserve your attention at all times. I look at it from the place of reminding myself that like, hey, I need to be up here doing a good job to maintain their attention. Right. So it's not that I'm coming from a place of scarcity. I'm coming from a place of like, I need to earn this. And so I'm constantly working to try to test in a way to make sure that I'm communicating in a way that creates an impact. And if I don't create an impact with somebody, it's like I wasn't speaking in the way that they needed. So, but I'm not trying to beat myself up for that. That's just, I understand that's kind of the nature of the game. So that's the first thing I do. The second thing is that like I try to focus on the people that are engaged, right? Because essentially like there will be a few people in the crowd that are going to be paying attention. I focus on them, right? I'm always paying attention to who's not, and that's okay, but I'm going to change how I do a little bit, but I'm also going to spend most of my time focusing on the people who want to hear what I have to say.
That makes sense, because I know when I'm teaching at MPI and like teaching the adjustments, it's like you can see the people who are kind of off in a daze and don't know what they're doing. But if you make eye contact with the people who like are truly engaged, I used to do this thing where we would teach side posture drops, and I'd go the cue of like arching over the person, and like I'd say you're like eating a bowl of something, and I'd call a try one out, and they'd be like, I was like, what's your favorite food? And they'd be like,
Fruit
and it's
Loops.
always, no, it's always pasta. For some reason, it's always pasta. And I go, well, we're going to say gluten-free pasta because I can't have pasta. And then everyone then would get engaged because they were terrified I was going to call on them.
Mm-hmm. That's a way to do it, right? You can create an element of anxiety, right? Like, oh, I got to be paying attention, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like it's speaking and communication is just as equally of a skill as adjusting or dry needling or any kind of manual or exercise therapy, right? Like there's all techniques, there's tactics, there's strategy, right? If you can get beyond your initial hang up on how being in front of people, then it becomes more of a game, right? Like it becomes a game, like how can you maintain attention with people who start wandering, right? How can you keep yourself from biting on the emotional bullet of, oh, like, that person's not paying attention to me. They don't care what I have to say. And like, that makes me angry or makes me feel sad, or like I'm self-conscious, right? Like that never really gets better, but you become stronger on how you deal with it, right? But then what really is cool about it is like as you get better at it, as the more you do it, right? Like the reason why I say yes to every single time you guys ask me to come speak at campus is because it's a chance for me to get better at it. So I look at it as growth opportunities, again, an educational thing. Like I may not be sharing riveting information. I try to because I'm pushing myself because it enables me. Do I even know the thing I'm trying to speak about? But it comes back to like, can I speak it and orient it in a way that helps people want to make an impact in their own lives and others, right? So it's kind of this like self-generating refinement process. So if you can get beyond the initial barrier of anxiety with putting yourself out there into a leadership or a communicative or a teaching position, those skills become a game by learning, refining, and implementing those skills. It's cool.
Yeah. Do you think it's easier to lead yourself, or do you think it's easier to lead others?
Well, you can't lead others without leading yourself, but it's easier to lead others than yourself.
Really?
I think that, because that requires a higher level of accountability than leading others. However, leading others before leading yourself is just management.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, because again, like, you're not keeping yourself accountable and you're not leading yourself. You're not creating your own inspiration, your own standards, your own behavior. You're not checking yourself. And so if you're not doing that for yourself, you're not leading. That's like leading by example, right? Like, you have to be the example, which is a really, like, if you only lead by example, by the way, which is a terrible leading strategy. But you have to do that for yourself to earn the respect of others.
So if it's a terrible strategy, then how are you going to lead others?
So it's a great question, right? So like, leading yourself creates standards and accountability, and it projects that you do what you preach. And so inherently it commands respect. Right? If you're doing the thing that you're helping try to teach others on, they will listen to you because you have social proof. Mm-hmm. Right? And if you can do that for yourself, you can create an outcome for yourself. That's the only way you can do that. Right? But a lot of people will then take that and into their leading strategy, into leading others. So that'll be their default leading strategy. Like, all right, this is what I do. This is how I do it. Right. And then you should do that too. Right. Or like, I lead by example because like I'm a good team player and like this is how I view this. And then they go and do that. Well, that's called pace setting. So there's different leadership strategies on how you can communicate with other people. And that implementation of pace setting is actually a really poor way to build rapport and connection with other people, because not everybody can do that the way that you can, because that's you.
It's like setting unrealistic expectations on
kind
everyone.
of in a way. Yeah. But it's also like, you may move at a pace that's not what everybody wants to do. So you may command their respect because they respect how hard you work, or how high standards you have, or what quality of a product you have, or how awesome your family and your relationships are. But if you're only doing that and you're not helping them become the best versions of themselves, or whatever the case is, you're not communicating in a way that helps them do that, then it's just your perspective. And then that doesn't build an emotional resonance with somebody else. And that doesn't create inspiration. So that's not leadership. It's just setting an example, which is fine. But if your goal is to lead others, you're not doing the thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So so leading others, right, is, I guess you can't do one without the other. But most people think I say it's easier to lead others before leading yourself, because you have to be the one to do it for yourself. And that's often the hardest thing to begin with. But as you move forward, like, it becomes harder to lead others because not everybody can do that. In the beginning, it's easier to lead others than lead yourself, because you can just hold somebody to some kind of standard and there's no accountability in the reciprocal end. Because mostly you're paying other people to do jobs for you.
Yeah.
Right. So that's management. That's management. So that's why I said that. But great question.
Yeah. So you've kind of sprinkled it in there and saying like inspiring, like things like that, and that creates leadership. So how do people shift from like the lead by example and then become more of the leader, where it's like, I'm inspiring you to like do the thing that I'm inspired about? Like, where is that like difference in action or thoughts or speaking?
There's a book I'm reading right now called Super Communicators. And I talked about that resonance. That comes from, so the inspiration comes from your ability to resonate with them and their ability to find themselves within your message, right? That's how you build culture in a business, right? That's how you build alignment. To create an impact on somebody, right? You have to communicate in a way that helps them create a desire. And that's the hardest part about it, because it's hard to predict that, right? So often what happens is that you're going to set your standard kind of, and this is your message, this is your values, this is all this, and this is what you stand for, which is why you create a why statement, a mission statement, core values, personal values. That's why all that stuff matters, so that you can show people what's possible. And if you create and you share it in a way that it create that people find themselves in, then they resonate with that message, which will then, if they have the qualities of growth and self-reflection, and they have a high emotional intelligence, and they're a driven, ambitious person, and they want more for themselves, they will then take that and run with it. But it requires on their end to have the prerequisites to take that information and spark of creativity and run with it. That is hard. That's what's the tough part about leadership, is that you can't predict that.
It's almost like you have to go out and say it as many times until you see that person have that light bulb and be like, oh, that's the one.
That's it, right? That's why he's hearing the same message over and over again from maybe different people or different times, different places. Like it's kind of an unpredictable thing, and timing is everything too, right? Like, are they in a place where they're ready to receive this message? I've said it 1,000 times in every team meeting you have every Monday morning, but like, they made it feel that one day might be different, right? And like, the only thing you can do as a leader is, in that regard, is just preach from the rafters and hope it lands, right? So it's as a leader, and it's an art. Like, leadership is an art, and it's a practice. And the hardest part about it is implementing it, and in a way that actually creates the result that you want. And so if the result, I always look at it as like, if the result isn't happening, then we're not doing the right combination of things. So it's constant. It's just like marketing. It's just this constant refinement and trial and error, and cycling in and out, trying to figure out what works, when it works, how it works, so you can implement the best strategy at the right time, at the right place, with the right people.
When you're talking about strategy and like the right puzzle pieces coming together, are you saying like you're using the right words, you're using the right tone?
Mm-hmm. All of it. Yeah.
Okay, so just changing those up.
Yeah, tone, word choice, word sequence, tonality, punctuation, pauses, volume, pitch, gestures, right? Positioning, posturing, body language, all of it. Like the whole slew of human communication, like everything, right? Changing people, right? Like and it's all comes down to building a bridge between you and a resonance, of an emotional resonance between you and somebody else. And all of that's the hardest part about all this thing. Like, it's like, you can't, like, at the end of the day, if that's what it is, then it's an impossible task.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But and that's why some people are better at it than others. Like, this skill can be taught. Everybody can become a super communicator, but some people have a natural talent for it a little bit more than others, right? I mean, I wouldn't have considered myself to be anywhere close to any of this when I first started. Like, I just, like, the way that people would react to me, I was like, oh, I guess people don't like me, right? And it's just like, because it's how I enter and communicate, how I enter conversation, my body language, my awkwardness, my, autistic tendencies, right? But like, and I definitely have some, right? But like, but that's kind of where being an individual comes into play. It's like, lean into yourself, like, be so relentlessly authentic, right? That that when you're saying lands with the people that it's intended for. And so that's why people have to find themselves in what you're saying. And you can't put so much pressure on yourself to connect with everybody, because that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, I was like, when you said you struggled with the communicating and the leadership and stuff like that, and the strategies, did you feel like you had to like constantly think about it all the time, or were you just like, okay, I know I'm good at these things, so I'm just going to do this more?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah, like I focused on my strengths. Like I focused on when it didn't work, focused on when it did work and how it worked and why it didn't work. So that I was just, again, testing myself all the time. Like, okay, well, that worked and that didn't work, and that's okay. Why didn't this work? Probably because of how I entered it, right? And just being honest with myself, right? But also not putting the pressure on myself to just be like, I have to be everything for everybody. I can't do that. I just can't. Because that is maddening. Like, not everybody likes me, and that's fine. I don't care, right? If I did care, I would live a very miserable life. But what I can do is I can try the best I can in the moments that I have and the opportunities that I have to be able to try to create as much opportunity for impact and change as I can. And that's all any of us can do, right? So, yeah, when I started out, it was just more just like, okay, forgive myself. That one wasn't the best idea, but we can do this one, right? And then just being radically authentic.
Yeah. What were your strengths that you found that were for you the strongest?
When I speak, when I'm teaching,
yes,
I can make things very simple. I would say that was probably the thing that helped me the most, is that like I was trying, when I first started teaching, I was trying to be the clinician and the teacher that my superiors and my mentors and my peers, the person I thought they wanted me to be. And I was trying to be this idea of what was the idea of what that person is, based on like going to seminars and what the guys would do when they would teach, or my professors or the other people and how they were teaching. And I had this idea of what it was to be that in my head. And so I had this like fake persona that I had created in my head and I was striving towards. When in reality, I just needed to focus on doing what I was really good at, which was just being myself. And then just slowly making micro adjustments along the way towards that goal. But the goal of like that person, but with the best qualities of who I am now. So it was focusing on my strengths the most. So like, okay, like I can make, if that person is really has good, excellent breadth of knowledge, right? And I'm trying to overcomplicate what I'm saying now. Like, do I even understand what's going on? So I'm going to take, what am I really good at? I'm really good at taking these complex things and this idea of what this person would know and say, and just be like, oh, well, I could just also say it like this because that actually makes more sense. And I made it make sense to me, right? Yeah. And so that, I think my strength then came from like distilling that idea into just the most basic things I could. And I've done that with everything because I was also really confused about what all of it was, right? And if I could teach it really simply, then it makes sense, right? And I found that I can create a resonance with people by making things more manageable rather than like putting it way so far out ahead because that's what that person would do, right? I can just make it actually something that most of us really actually need instead of just like leaving everybody in the dust.
No, that's so fair. Because like, funny enough, that's like a learning strategy is like, can you teach it to a 5-year-old?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. It's how we do histories and how we explain information to patients. Why are clinicians different? Right. We need to teach it in a way that's digestible now instead of being like, okay, like, look, there are levels to this, right? Like we need to teach it in a way that helps us make it manageable now to where you actually leave a learning session feeling like, okay, I did learn some stuff. That's cool. That actually creates a desire to learn more, to go and then search for it yourself to deepen your knowledge of the construct, rather than talking so far ahead in a way that then leaves us all confused and lost and resistant to the information to begin with. Right. And I think that, again, it comes back to my power. It's like, because I'm not the smartest guy in the bunch. I gave up on being this like grandiose idea of what I thought I should be, because that's unattainable. But what I can do is make really, really complex things really, really simple if I understand it. And so if I just spend the time thinking about it, talking about it really simply ways for 5-year-olds, then it actually lands better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I know I got a little off topic there and a little heady there, but I hope it made sense.
No, I love it. That was great. I do want to ask, because I feel like a lot of people, especially in chiropractic school, have that moment where they feel like they need to be the smartest person in the room, but they know that they're not, because they're either just trying to like please other people or ride the expectation. What would you tell that person who's like still battling that and knows that they need to let it go?
What's more important, your ego or helping the people you're trying to help?
Oof, that's good.
Seriously though, like,
Yeah.
like we all get this idea where like, hey, we're surrounded by all these great docs. If you're a rep or you're somebody who goes to workshops or works on their skills actively, right? You eventually come into contact with people that are above you, right? Or you have people above you telling you what you should do. And that's great, because that needs to happen. That's how mentorship and community builds, and that's how you get set on your path, right? The path, or that's how you align with a certain path and then walk it. But in the process, right, we see the end, or we see where those people are at in their journey, and then we assume, because we're with them, that subconsciously that we're there too, when we need to earn those milestones. And you're in chiropractic school, you're also in a place, you're surrounded by peers at the same place where everybody's competing. So you're kind of in this like hyper competitive environment, but also like creating levels. You're seeing how far it can go, and you're like, shoot. And like where am I at? And you haven't had a lot of time with the information, because your cortisol levels are through the roof, because you're also taking 18 tests in 2 weeks, and you just finished try 7 and it didn't make sense, or you failed a final, you got boards coming up, or you're trying to get better at your hand skills, and you're just in this rigmarole of just BS in your mind, all while you have expectations placed on you and how much better you should be. And so then you see a future cast in front of yourself, and you're like, and you're just like in this vortex of anxiety, right? Especially if you're a person with ambitions and goals.
Yeah.
And so what happens is that, okay, the ego then comes out to say, okay, cool, like I am doing work. I have to make sense of this so that I can feel okay about myself. Because none of us want to feel not okay. Yeah. Our brains are designed to keep us protected psychologically and physically, right? So and letting go of your ego is the most contradictory thing ever, right? Because to be a fool in an environment like that means you're the person who gets left behind psychologically, right? So like we play tricks on ourselves to make us feel comfortable. Well, the problem is that as a student, you suck. Just flat out. You have no patient experience. You haven't been in the world. You don't know what's going on. You just have ideas that people have placed in your heads. And you have this whole circle of people around you that are competing in similar but yet different environments. And the environment doesn't encourage you as an individual to be introspective in a way like, this is really where I'm at. And that's okay. Because when you graduate, guess what, guys? No one's going to hold your hand. There's no professors. There's no, like, luckily, if you have mentors, they'll help you out, right? But there's nobody. Like, your parents don't know unless they're chiros and they're doing the same thing, right? Very few of them are, right? Your friends don't know because they're not living your life. The professors don't care. They care about you if you form a relationship with them, but they don't, because they're both focused on their lives. It's just you versus the world. And at that point, then you're just like, okay, now what, right? And that's where the ego comes in. And you're like, oh crap. Like, then you're like, oh, I got to figure this out. And if you spend time earlier by saying like, okay, and really realistically being honest with yourself about where you're at with all this stuff, and you just confront it, you don't have that oh crap moment. You go, oh, okay, like shedding that actually helped me be real with myself now, because then you actually get to work on yourself and where you're truly at, so that that doesn't shock you when you get to the end. Right? Like it's again, and like if you let that go, guess who benefits? Your patience. And if you don't, then you ignore it, and then you end up screwed, because then you don't have skills, you're not honest with yourself, so you don't really know where you're truly at. And so when you get actually put into a clinical situation, you may or may not make a good decision, because you haven't tested yourself, and you only get to do that if you let your ego go.
Yeah. No.
So I would say that just like letting that go and being honest with yourself and not being afraid to look foolish in front of your friends who also don't know what's going on, then you'll actually go have some actual growth. Right? So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
It was like you were reading my entire story from like try 1 all the way up to try 5. Because try 5, there was a moment for me where I was debating like not finishing school. I was like, I'm just gonna go back to be a personal trainer, like I can do this, do it that way. But then, especially because it was during a time where a lot of my friends started getting into clinic, and you see the like accelerating growth that they have, and you're like, what just happened? I don't understand. And then I have boards coming up. It's like I have to study for this too. But really letting go and just being like, making things stupid simple. And I think also tutoring really helped me, because then like I got to see things over and over and over again, and then explaining it to other people. And then now being in clinic, I told someone a couple of days ago, like, it feels like I've been in clinic for 2 years just by the growth that I've had.
Yeah. Because then guess what? You don't have to worry about it anymore. You've already confronted that space in your mind where it's like, yeah, like this is just what I do. Like I'm just in clinic now. Right? Not like, oh, like I should be here or I should be there. No, like you're being where your feet are.
Yeah.
Right. For anyone who knows me, I led a lot of the traditional chiro route when I was in school, and before I went head first into rehab and performance. And the reason why I switched is because like I thought there was a lot of great stuff from a mindset perspective, traditional chiro, because there's a lot of being present in the philosophy, and I think that there's something to that. I think as clinicians in the rehab space and sports space is that we get ahead of ourselves because being clinically excellent is a prerequisite. And the philosophy doesn't have like places where we sit and speak about this stuff as human beings. And I do think the traditional chiro side of chiropractic excels at that, because it's mostly philosophy in my mind. Which is something that's important. And I think all of us, but the philosophy of being a good clinician means that you also have to be present for your patients, present where you're at currently. And you can't do that as if your mind's somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. And if
it
you
like
don't,
forces you to be introspective.
Yes. Yes. And if you focus on where you're at in school, then you're like, okay, what's realistic to expect this now? Now, if you're someone who wants more for themselves, then you should focus on being extraordinary for that situation where you're in. However you can, right? Be working on your skills, be working on teaching, be working on the science, be working on the art, right? Be working on your techniques in your clinical, in your audit process, right? So that way you're a more refined version of yourself at that time. But we like to get ahead of ourselves, right? Be where your feet are.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about like what it looks like to be a leader in like a title standpoint or just in school or being a clinician. I'm curious, how does leadership show up in friendships, relationships, family?
Friendships, relationships, family. Oh, we're gonna get a little deep here, okay?
All right.
All
I'm
right.
ready for it.
So, guys, if whoever listens to this, also like let you know that I'm again radically transparent. I don't try to hide things anymore, because I just felt like it burdens me emotionally if I do that. I have to talk things out. I'm a talker, which is ironic because I'm an introvert.
Hey,
Enneagram 5. Enneagram 5.
really?
Mm-hmm.
I would
Yeah.
have never guessed that.
What'd you think? 3,
Oh,
maybe?
yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
5, 3. Yeah.
Okay, this
Yeah.
makes sense now.
Yeah. I'm a 5 based on my limited amount of words and energy that I have per day. But once I'm out, it's a hard stop.
Limited amount of words. I think your word
Limited,
limit.
yeah, it's getting close. Limited amount of words and energy per day. Yes. Okay, but so relationships. So what was the first one?
Friendships, relationships, family.
So friendships and my friends, relationships is Viv, family, and then family. Yeah. So like leadership, again, if you're leadership also requires you to set an example, and you also have to hold yourself to a higher standard. In order to create an impact for other people, you also have to hold yourself at a higher standard than the others around you. That's the self-accountability component to it. So against, like, back to your comment from earlier, you can't do one without the other, right? Unless you're managing, then it's flipped and then it's wrong. But you have to hold yourself to a higher standard in pretty much all things. The way you act, the way you speak, the way you go to sleep, what you eat, how you exercise. Like, you have to live an extraordinary life, right? And that has to be embodied in your day-to-day actions, right? How you talk, the words you use. You kind of have to elevate, right? Versus those around you, which that's the hardest thing, because it puts you in a lonely place. Because that's what they call the burden of leadership, by the way. Is the burden of the decisions that person has to make for the others, right? It's like the same thing when you're in the military. If you're like I'm not in the military, I've never been in the military, but the people I've talked to who have, they all say the same thing. If they're in charge of other people, like, that's a tremendous responsibility for somebody else's well-being, especially in a live fire combat situation, which I've never been in. But my uncle, who was a colonel in the Marines, did. But leadership, like you have to be the first one. You have like you have to be the king or the queen, right? You have to treat yourself like that. And so if in your relationships, right? Like, I'll talk about my wife first. Right? I'm calling her my wife. We get married in 7 weeks, but 7 weeks from today, by the way. But but I'm calling her my wife because she's my wife now. I have to be extraordinary for her, right? I have to show up for her. That means cleaning up after myself. That means, again, communicating how I feel. That means communicating what I disagree with and what I do agree with. That means putting up a boundary when she crosses it, right? And communicating that, where I come from, and even if it's uncomfortable for her to hear, right? Because you're holding a standard, right? And that standard applies in all relationships too. So if I can't run away from a fight because I don't like it, like, I have to sit in the suck and be honest with her, even if it may not be okay, right? Because again, that's what the person that I envision myself being has to do. So it's part of being like, this is the ideal version of yourself. It's called you have to kind of set that example, that ideal version of yourself, and act in accordance with it. And that dictates how you communicate in your relationship. So that's an example of how I would do that with Viv. In like my friendships, for example, like, I have a couple friends going through divorces right now, ironically, as I'm getting married. And I've had to have some very hard conversations with some of them about how they're conducting themselves in this process. And because I disagree. And the person that I view myself as a leader disagrees. And I am obligated to tell them that. Because if I don't, the consequence of not communicating that ripples through my life and the people that are around me. And so being a leader also means you have to protect those around you. Like, I have to protect Vivian from the decisions that my friends are making that will inevitably impact my relationship with them and my relationship with my wife. So I have to be a protector of her and her energy and her peace, when a downstream second or third order consequence of a different person's actions will be affecting me, right? So like I have to stand up to that, but also be accountable, right? If I screw up with one of them, I have to apologize, right? So it's one of those things where it's radical transparency and radical ownership, pretty much in all relationships. Same thing with family. So if being a leader means, creating inspiration and having that social proof, like we talked about, that means you also have to live up to that standard. And that standard dictates how you interact with everybody in your life. Coworkers, family members, relationships, friendships, strangers, right? So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes. With setting that higher expectation of yourself and trying to meet that higher expectation of yourself, how do you make sure your ego doesn't get in the way? We talked about that earlier, but I feel like that would be a really easy spot to be like,
totally.
Why don't they just do what I do?
Yeah, totally. Like that kind of that pace setting thing, right? Like
Yeah.
pace setting is a communication leadership strategy. It's not necessarily it's not like necessarily like a standard. It's just like you're behaving in a way that you're moving quickly, and it doesn't encourage team building. But in regards to your question, it's like, yeah, ego could definitely come in to that, right? It's like, oh, I'm right and you're wrong, because this is what I am, right? And that's kind of that hyper masculine archetype that you see in popular media nowadays. But if you're taking radical ownership, right, then the prerequisite of radical ownership requires you to be radically authentic and also critical of oneself as well, because you have to take ownership of yourself and your part in that. And if you actually have a part to play, you need to own up to that. So if you do take, in my opinion, a true like ownership role in your life, that if you truly believe that, when the time comes, you will have to own up to that. I do think that. So what matters more, your ego or the result? In my mind, the result matters more, because that actually impacts that actually creates the impact I'm trying to create. So I would rather create the impact than be right.
Gotcha. So it's setting your priorities of what you really want to happen.
Yes. So if your priority is your relationship needs to be healthy, then what matters more, the relationship or you? Right? What matters more, right? The outcome in business or you? What matters more? And so if you do take that approach, I think the answer is pretty clear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like I know for myself and I know for you, we're both very introspective people, but I'm like, do other people think this deep as us?
No.
Yeah.
Lots of people do. I mean, there's tons of intelligent people everywhere, right? There's also tons of non-intelligent people everywhere. But introspectiveness to a level of a fault is not a very common thing. People are introspective, but most of the time the ego takes over, right? It's interesting.
Well, and it's also like going back to, you can be introspective, but then I know there was a time in my life where I was introspective, but I was so nervous I didn't want to take any of the actions that like I probably should have, or I didn't, how do I word this? Like I didn't want to confess it to myself that the thing I was doing was wrong.
Yeah.
Or that I needed to change for that outcome, to where now I feel like that's changed, where it's like I think about it, I ruminate on it, but now I take the action.
Well, let me ask you this. Why did you do that?
Why did I change?
Why did you end up deciding like, okay, like before, because I mean, I identified with that so much, and I'll give you an example of why here in a second, but what led you to make that change?
I stopped. It was definitely how other people saw me. Like, so the reason why a lot of the times I wouldn't make, for that first example, where I kind of wouldn't make that change, was either A, I didn't think it was that bad, or if it was like something different than what everyone else was doing, it was like I didn't want to be different than everyone else.
You want to stand out.
Yeah. And then now it's like, I don't really care. Well, most of the time, I don't care what other
We still
people
care.
think. Yeah,
We still
yeah,
care. Yeah, for sure.
um, but I'm okay with disappointing myself. Like being like, yeah, I know this wasn't right. Or maybe like the conversation that I had with the person, I didn't use the right words or the right tone, or I knew I came across the wrong way, or I said the wrong thing. And I'm okay with saying like, hey, I messed up. I'm going to change this moving forward, rather than, hey, I messed up, you're dumb, you're a failure, blah, 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 blah.
Well, the self-talk improved.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're not going to punish yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Better coping mechanism, I would say.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I had a similar experience with that. Like in business. So like let's switch the conversation a little bit to business themed, but same topic, right?
Okay.
My example is almost exactly the same.
Hmm.
But comes back to kind of my reasoning is what's more important, the result or yourself, your own identity. And there's a concept in business. It's not really a business concept. It's just kind of a life concept, but it's like your identity versus the role you're in. And I think this kind of comes back to is like what kind of helped me unlock my teaching ability is that somewhere along the lines, I figured out that my identity as a person, my worth as a person wasn't tied to how somebody reacted to me when I was teaching. So like I assumed a different role. Well, my identity isn't tied to the role I'm playing, right? My identity as a person is insulated when I'm teaching because I'm just in teaching Kyle mode. I'm a different person when I'm teaching in my mind. I'm a different person when I'm a clinician, even though I'm not. But like in my mind, I'm a little bit performative. But in my mind, it's different. So like if somebody rejects me when I'm teaching, it's not me. They're not rejecting me. They're just rejecting Kyle teaching. Kyle, the teacher. They're not rejecting Kyle. And the reason I say that is that in business, like I wouldn't do certain actions to grow my business because I was scared to do them because I was scared of the rejection that it would take, that I would endure by trying to execute on these actions. Like going to a business and asking for referrals, for example. Like I was scared to be rejected because then they would reject me in my work.
Yeah.
But that's just the role I'm playing to grow my business. Right. And so like eventually you get to the point where it doesn't really bother you as much because you switched your identity and your role. Right. That's what you did. Right.
Yeah.
That's what you did. And that applies in everything. My example was just a business topic, right? It's like setting up a workshop or going to an event or working, rubbing butts at a table at a 5K, right? Like that isn't your worth as an individual. It's just the role you're playing in that moment. So it's a mindset frame shift, right? Different coping mechanism, right? So like, yeah.
Yeah. You had mentioned a little bit of like business and talking and fear of that rejection, and like probably with patients you've had to deal with like really hard conversations.
Oh, yeah.
I'm curious, how do you deal with, because I feel like having a normal conversation with a human being, like yes, you can like try and like mimic their posture and stuff like that, but when it comes to those conversations where it's like whether that be with a patient, whether that be with a friendship where emotions are really high, how do you handle that?
So again, we're going to talk about this in the cohort in about 2 weeks. We're going to talk about this in about 2 weeks. So that's called a crucial conversation.
Okay.
So there's a book. Oh, again, where
Wasn't
is
it called Crucial Conversations?
It's called Crucial Conversations. Yeah.
I watched the video.
Right. Yeah. Crucial Conversations by Joseph Grenny. This book changed my life. This book changed my life. Why? Crucial Conversation. That book's a framework on how to handle those conversations, guys. Those are the toughest things to how to handle. Because essentially, a crucial conversation is like this. Let me paint a picture. You ever seen Pirates of the Caribbean 3?
I've seen the first one.
Okay, in the third movie, Davy Jones, the Flying Dutchman, Jack Sparrow and the Black Pearl. Okay. They enter into a vortex, right? And the boats are circling and they're descending, right? And they're firing cannons at each other, and the pirates are swinging from the rafters, and they're literally crossing swords over an abyss. Right? It's an epic scene. Epic scene. It's incredible. And the score by Howard Shore is just insane. Or was it Hans Zimmer? I think. Anyway, it doesn't matter right now. But my point being is that a crucial conversation is essentially that. It's you and another person swirling back around each other, firing at each other from your points of view in a conversation. And handling those, that is a crucial conversations are how you have to have them all the time, right? And it's a you versus them thing, right? With the end goal of, just like in the movie, that the ships come together and then they rise up out of the vortex together going the same direction for the same reason. The goal of a crucial conversation ultimately is to do that. Now that takes both parties wanting to do the same thing, because it's a two-way conversation. Relationships are two-way streets. But when you have a crucial conversation, which there's strong emotions, there's differing opinions, there's lots at stake, right? Learning to use those skills we talked about to navigate those uncertain waters helps you kind of, again, reach that resonance point where you're like, okay, maybe we have something here. I'm feeling some strong emotions. They're yelling at me, but there was a bit of a moment there where you like, okay, maybe we aligned on something. And the whole point of when you get into those conversations, having tough conversations with people, whether it's patients, relationships, whatever, is to kind of find that golden path, to find that golden thread and then lock onto it. And then use that to bring you back to the center, to use all those techniques we were talking about, to lower the stakes, lower the emotions, to set a new standard so that you can move in the right direction conceptually. Okay. Right. So your goal is to to get to a point where you're equal in the conversation and then steer it in a way that makes sense to the end goal. Right. If for patients, when you have those conversations, because maybe some people, like, I can't tell you how many times somebody's come into me and be like, Kyle, my leg was worse after you worked on it. And I'd be like, okay, well, tell me about it. Well, hold on here. Like, okay, that's okay. Let's rehash here. Let's make sure, let's figure this out so that way we don't do that again. Tell me about it. Like, walk me through what happened, right? Let them tell their story, right? Let them tell what happened, right? Is that before you get defensive, right? If you come at things defensively, there's no established boundaries, right? There's no communication. It's just blaming. Right. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. What it sounds like is, or what I'm thinking about is, I've been in conversations where we're just going in circles because I want to win and they want to win. And so we're just going back and forth.
That's a crucial conversation. 100%. Yeah, yep.
To where when I come at a conversation and I'm listening to them, and once they finally say something that I agree with, I go, yes, but, and then we kind of like almost get to that thread. Is that what you're talking about by the golden thread?
Then you get sucked back in.
Yeah, sometimes.
It's a crucible. Yeah. You're in the gladiatorial arena. Mm-hmm. Like the proverbial mental space where you and somebody are combating between two sets of ideas because you want to win and they want to win, mm-hmm. right? Your goal is to get out of there, actually, so you don't both die on the field of battle. But yes, no, exactly. That is 100% a crucial conversation. And by finding that idea, that's your bridge. You just open the door to a new possibility during the conversation, but you still have to convey your candor in a way that is non-threatening. So that requires tone change, volume change, pitch change, word choice, calm emotions. You have to keep yourself in check. You can't do it if your emotions are out of check. You got to check your ego. Because if you don't check your ego, you're going to stay in the vortex.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest thing about it all. It's the hardest thing about it all as a clinician, as a friend, and being in a relationship, as a family member. Any part of communication ever is to not bite on the fool's errand, which is what you biting to your initial emotional response to something. Like, I'll tell you an example. I got a text from somebody the other day, I did not reply to his initial text because he did not answer my question when I asked him a question. And then he sent me a passive aggressive text like a day later. And I was like, all right, hold on here, buddy. Hold on. I got to calm myself down. Because if I had said what I wanted to say, it would not have been good. Right. So you have to ignore that initial reaction to things, especially in a conversation like that. Because you can't grab onto that thread and work towards that goal. You can't pull yourself out of it if you cut the thread. If you leave that conversation, sorry, I cut you off.
No, you're good.
If you leave that conversation feeling anything other than, wow, this was resolved, you didn't do a good enough job.
Yeah, I'm thinking of this, like, there's a specific person that I'm thinking of, and we get into, like, the crucial conversations all the time, and it doesn't help that, like, we get very passionate about the things that we care about, and this tends to happen in those conversations. And there sometimes just comes to a point where I go, we have difference of opinion, and it's going to be what it's going to be. Yeah. But how do you be in those crucial conversations and then find that golden thread without just like
losing
it or being a doormat where it's just like, okay, whatever. Like,
so what we're talking about right now for anyone who listens is the hardest thing to do by far. Like by far. This is not easy. And I'm no expert in this because I'm just like you. I'm a human being and nobody's really good at this. Right. Very, 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 very few people are really good at this. And this is currently kind of this is why I took the approach of trying to let my ego go. Because ultimately, right, like your ability to build bridges with people comes back down to that. Right. So what matters more, the bridge or your position? And you have to make that decision in that moment. Right. And that other person also has to make that decision. Right. Because ultimately, the only way that you come out of that is if the other person grabs onto the golden thread with you. You can't convince them to do that. They have to willingly choose it based on the competition of the two sets of ideas. You can lay out a red carpet for them to go there and be like, come on, dude, I'm ready. Let's go. They can't. Sometimes people don't hop on that train with you. That's why it's a two-way street, right? And that's a decision they have to make. And at that point, if they're hopping on, great, continue on. If they're not, then you have to close the loop. Then you'd be like, all right? Like when you fire somebody, for example, be like, an efficient way to do that is to be like, hey, I've had to do this twice, and so not very much in my life. But when you fire somebody, you ask them like, hey, okay, like you have to ask yourself if you want to be here, like, or I'm firing you, right? So like at that point, you could be like, okay, look, just by saying like I'm done with this conversation does not mean you're a doormat. What I mean by saying that story is that like, hey, like at some point you're gonna have to be like, all right, like this, you recap the conversation and be like, okay, you have to decide if this is something that you want to move forward with or not. Right? That's where I stand. Right? You can't beg them. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So like if you're kind of in that discussion, right? It's just like, okay, you have to close the loop somehow, right? And be like, okay, like, do you want to do this or not? Kind of scenario. Or, cool, like this is where, I want to do this, but if you don't want to do that, that's fine as well. But that's just where we're going to stand. Right? No, that's not you being a doormat. That's not you being a doormat. That's just you saying, okay, like we're agreeing to disagree. And like, right. And if we can't reach that middle ground and move forward, then that loop is closed. And that will continue to loop and loop and loop every single time you do that until both of you decide to move forward in some fashion that both of you agree with. And that's the crucible, right? And then that won't resolve. Sometimes that never resolves. There's not always this golden path for every conversation, every crucial conversation. That is just, you're setting the stage for the opportunity for that to be created. Hopefully we can walk out the door together. Right? And if you make that decision, and that comes back to whether you're deciding to that, like that's more important to you than your own ego, great. If the other person doesn't meet you there, all right, you know you did your best. If you walk away from it feeling like, all right, I felt good about how I handled that, great. Great. That would be the second best option, right?
Yeah.
The first one would be obviously the result you wanted. Second option is the one that you got that you feel good with, right? If they don't meet you there, they don't meet you there. Then you can sit there and be like, you can yell at me, man. Like, I said my piece, you know?
Yeah. And that's usually how it ends up happening.
Mm-hmm. Typically happens in chiropractic school, yeah. Typically happens, yep. Lots of differing opinions, lots of strong emotions for no reason.
Well, because what else do we have to do besides
Nothing.
like take
Just
tests and
argue and be stressed out and disagree with each other?
Well, we went down some very deep rabbit holes, and I am really appreciative of you being on the podcast. I have one last question for everyone before we find out where they can all find you.
Yeah.
If, let's say, someone was like, you know what, I want to step up and I want to start being a leader today, what is one thing they can implement this week to be more of a leader?
Today.
Mm-hmm.
Lead yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Lead yourself. Right? I guess it comes back to that answer, right? You have to lead yourself first before you can lead others. And that comes down to, there's a concept called, and I think I touched on this earlier. You're getting all the juicy stuff from me.
Yay.
There's a concept called 10.0 self, or yourself 2.0, whatever you want to call it. Defining what that ideal version of yourself is, whether that's Becca 2.0, whether it's Kyle 10.0, whatever that is, right? Define it. Get clear on what that is. Because then you can walk the path towards that version of yourself, right? The more clear you get on that, and it doesn't have to be overnight, it takes years. It takes years to get ultra clear, to feel the resonance with that definition, to then change your own behavior, to then search for that. But to sit down, I would say the thing to do is today is to sit down and just write it out. Because if you can write it out and you can define it, then you know what the goal is. It's measurable, right? Because then then all you have to do is just move in alignment with that. Right? That will create the rippling effect of leadership. Because you change, then your world changes.
Love that.
It was great.
Yeah. Where can people find you? Drop the mic.
Drop the mic. Yeah. Where can they find me? Well, I work too much. So you can find me in the clinic. I work at Kinetic Chain. I work a lot. You can find me on Instagram at lowercase Dr. Kyle Thompson. You can shoot me a DM there. I also work with R2P, Rehab to Performance. I sit on the national executive board for that company. So you can find me at our events. Instagram. If you want to get a hold of me, Instagram, Dr. Kyle Thompson, all lowercase, all together. Let me just make sure that that's still alive. Right? Because I have 2 Instagram accounts. And
I noticed that.
Yeah, I wanted to create a business one, not my. Yeah, Dr. Kyle Thompson, all one word together, all lowercase. That would be the best way to find me.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyle, for being on the podcast.
You're welcome. I hope some of it made sense. I was rambling quite a bit.
Hey, that's what it's for. That's why it's called Becca Babbles.
Becca Babbles. What a name of a podcast. I love it.
We're just going to end it on that.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Becca Babbles podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, the best thing that you can do is leave a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or any other listening platform of your choosing. If you want to learn more about me, you can do that by following me on Instagram at Becca and Wellness, or by checking out my blog, freebies, offers, and newsletter on my website at beccaandwellness.com. If you want to share the love of the podcast, you can do that by taking a screenshot and sharing it on social media and tagging me and the podcast at Becca and Wellness and using the hashtag Becca Babbles Podcast. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I can't wait to babble with you next time.